Hi, I'm Mirriam Sadiq, and this is Trials and Errors, a show where we talk about the latest legal news. Today I want to talk about something that I get asked about a lot, and that's conspiracy. I wanted to spend a little time talking about one of the ways in which people who haven't actually done the crime can be found guilty of the crime. Specifically, today we'll discuss conspiracies to commit crimes and what exactly the word conspiracy means. This came up recently when I was asked by a friend if what the president did, his words and actions leading up to the events of January 6th, if that would make him guilty of the crimes of sedition and insurrection, even if he didn't go to the Capitol, because we know that he didn't. He got in his car and drove back home. And even if he didn't use the exact words, break into the Capitol and kill Mike Pence. The short answer is yes. He could be guilty. How? Conspiracy. The General Federal Conspiracy Statute says, if two or more persons conspire either to commit any offense against the United States or to defraud the United States or any agency thereof in any manner or for any purpose, and one or more of such persons do any act to effect the object of the conspiracy, each shall be fined under this title or imprisoned not more than 5 years or both. So what does this mean? It means that under the general statute, if you conspire to commit an offense and one of the conspirators does something to move that whole offense forward, everyone is guilty of conspiracy to commit the offense. This statute is merciful, though, because it sets the maximum sentence at 5 years. Now, this particular statute also requires what we call an overt act, meaning that someone in the conspiracy, anyone at all, has to do something, anything, to further the conspiracy. It can be the most minor thing ever, driving by the bank to scope it out. Many conspiracy statutes don't even require an overt act. For example, a Hobbs Act robbery conspiracy has 3 elements. 1, an agreement to commit a Hobbs Act robbery, which is just a robbery that has an element of interstate commerce. This has to be between 2 or more persons. 2, the defendant's knowledge of the conspiratorial goal, which is usually the robbery. And 3, the defendant's voluntary participation in furthering the goal. There isn't any requirement that anyone in the conspiracy do anything at all to further the goal. A lot of useless talk, jibber-jabber, is usually enough. But just for good measure, I'm going to tell you the government will usually make sure that someone does something to move the crime forward. Whether, like I said before, it's a person driving around a bank or a warehouse they intend to rob, or telling people where and what time to meet or what to bring with them when they meet up. And this is a conspiracy even if no one ever meets up, if there's no robbery, if there was never anything to rob in the first place. A lot of time, the main organizers of conspiracies don't ever get their hands dirty. The leaders of criminal organizations don't stash the drugs in their homes. They don't talk on the phone in explicit language. They don't drive around doing the drug sales. But trust that if the government caught any of them doing anything at all that could even be marginally connected with a robbery or a drug deal, they'd be person number 1 on the indictment. Remember, we talked about indictments when we talked about impeachment. You should also know that a co-conspirator is liable for everything that was foreseeable in a conspiracy. So if you're in a drug conspiracy and one of the people involved does a drive-by killing a 6-year-old, guess what? You're on the hook for that murder, even if all you did was sell a few grams of dope so you could feed your own addiction. If the entire conspiracy ended up on the hook for a few dozen kilos of whatever your substance of choice is, you're on the hook for that too. If 5 people died during the storming of the Capitol that you encourage, that's also all on you. It was foreseeable that that could happen. There's some talk about felony murder, which is a completely different topic. And this is has nothing to do with felony murder. This is simple conspiracy law that people get caught up in every single day. Here's another thing. A conspirator remains liable for crimes committed in furtherance of the scheme until the conspiratorial goal is achieved or the conspirator withdraws. What does it mean to withdraw from a conspiracy? It's not enough to show that the person stopped being a part of the conspiratorial activity, meaning he just didn't do it anymore. That doesn't help. They have to do some affirmative act that establishes that they disavow the criminal association with the conspiracy. Either they make a clean break to the authorities or communicate the abandonment in a manner reasonably calculated to reach co-conspirators. If you're wondering why so many people wanted the president to tell these people to stop, to go home, and to disavow the violence, it's because the only way to break from this conspiracy was by him doing that loudly and publicly. He didn't do that. In fact, this week he doubled down and said his words were entirely appropriate and he did nothing wrong. Prosecutors love using the following analogy in closing arguments in conspiracy cases. If you sign a contract with the New York Knicks and you suit up but do nothing but sit on the bench for every single game for the entire season, when someone asks you, what do? You would say you play for the New York Knicks, even if you've never even dribbled the ball during regulation play. That's your job. So it doesn't matter how little a part you may play in a criminal endeavor, you get to claim all of it. Whether it's 5 kilos of heroin or 5 people dying, you are guilty of anything that is reasonably foreseeable that comes from the conspiracy. We skipped over a pretty important question in all this, which is, what is the unlawful act or crime that President Trump, Don Jr., and Giuliani conspired to commit? These crimes would be insurrection and sedition. I did a video on sedition last week. Click the link to see that. But how about insurrection? Well, Chapter 18 of the United States Code, Section 2383, defines rebellion or insurrection as whoever incites, sets on foot, assists, or engages in any rebellion or insurrection against the authority of the United States or the laws thereof, or gives and or comfort thereto, shall be fined under this title or imprisoned not more than 10 years, and shall be incapable of holding any office under the United States. So it's possible that once this is all said and done, even if Trump isn't impeached, that he could be charged and convicted for insurrection. Look, it isn't unlawful to protest. It isn't even unlawful to protest for dumb reasons. However, it is unlawful to try to violently overthrow the lawful administration of the government and to disrupt the work of Congress. That's in the statute. It's unlawful to encourage people to, now let me get his exact words, march to the Capitol and fight like hell. Trust, if any of my clients ever said march to the Capitol and fight like hell, and then a bunch of people marched to the Capitol and literally fought like hell, well, he wouldn't be watching what happened after that from the comfort of his home, at least not for long. That's the big difference between the president and ordinary people. Now, let's also move on to Don Jr. As a warm-up to his dad's 70-minute speech, Don Jr. said, "We're coming for you." I think he was talking about GOP members of Congress who weren't going to object to the Electoral College certifying the votes. Are people really trying to tell me he meant we are coming for you at the ballot box? I guess that's one theory. You should tell it to the jury. See if they believe it. And Rudy Gargamel Shoes Giuliani said, "This is trial by combat." If that's not insurrection or rebellion, and if those aren't an agreement to do an unlawful act, I don't know what is. Again, none of this was done in secret, which is unusual for most conspiracies, I guess except for white supremacist conspiracies and ISIS. They're both really bad at hiding what they're going to do, but also it's because they don't feel the need to. So Trump, Don Jr., and Giuliani didn't actually physically do anything. I mean, POTUS and Giuliani are old as heck and also terribly out of shape. And Don Jr. has his own set of issues. But regardless, they are still liable for anything that was reasonably foreseeable from this conspiracy, including the 5 deaths. And in case this wasn't clear before, conspiracies don't have to be overt. They don't have to be in writing. No one has to say the literal words, "I agree to enter into this unlawful act with you. We are in agreement that we are going to commit insurrection, rebellion, sedition." You can determine a conspiracy by your own common sense. Does it make sense that all these people organically showed up and committed these acts, and it was just coincidence that they were fully prepared for a hostile takeover of the Capitol, just as Trump had asked? Or is it more likely that they were all in on it together and just waiting to hear Trump say it was okay for them to go to the Capitol and fight like hell? If you like this video, please subscribe, hit the like button, and also the bell icon so that you can get notification of future videos. Thanks. Later.